Welcome to Oh Hell No with Nicole.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today I have Richard Marin. I didn't even ask you, is that how you pronounce your last name?
Well, it's close enough. It's Marin if you live on the East Coast. It's Marin if you live on the West Coast.
Okay. All right, so he is a former Bear Stearns CEO. He's an author, an entrepreneur, and a professor. You are a jack of all trades.
Well, thank you. The only correction I'm going to make is I was the former CEO of Bear Stearns Asset Mgmt.
Okay.
Which was a portion of Bear Stearns.
Yes. We got to make that clear. We don't want anybody to get,
I don't want to think I'm Jimmy Kane. He's a fellow New Jerseyite like you, so I wouldn't do that to him.
Right. We don't want any problems. So tell us 3 things that you are passionate about.
Well, I think first and foremost, I'm passionate about motorcycling. It's been a lifelong passion for me for 50 years, and I own a number of motorcycles, and I ride regularly, and my wife and I tend to take vacations that are motorcycling vacations. We went through Greece last year, through Croatia the year before, and are going later this year around Sicily. So I love motorcycling. That's the first thing. Second passion is, I think, is probably the movies, because I've always had a thing about movies. I like sort of removing myself and putting myself into stories that other people have created. And then I'm passionate about writing. I do a lot of writing, and if I'm not watching a movie or riding a motorcycle, I'm probably writing.
Wow, I love that. My husband likes motorcycles too, but I'm such a scary cat. I've never gotten on with him. He likes sport bikes, so I'm just like, I don't know about that. So I think your wife is pretty cool, to go riding with you so far, like long distance.
Well, the truth of it is she rides sometimes with me, but she's always in a chase car as well if she doesn't want to ride all the time.
But still, that's awesome. I love it. So what did you start your career out doing, and how did you choose the path that you ended up with in finance?
Sure. Well, I went straight through from undergraduate in economics and government at Cornell, and stayed right on at Cornell and did my master's of MBA, my MBA in finance in 1 year. So I went from there right onto Wall Street. I went to work for Bankers Trust Company, which at the time was more commercial banking, but was in the process of changing to merchant banking and eventually investment banking. But that was part of the transition the industry was going through. And I went to work in Midtown Manhattan in 1976 and stayed with Bankers Trust for 23 years. And I ended up being on the management committee there. We sold ourselves to Deutsche Bank in 1999, and I went on to their management group and was CEO of Deutsche Asset Management. Did that for a few years. Started my own venture capital company called Beehive Ventures with some partners, and did that for a few years, and then went back to Wall Street as chairman and CEO of Bear Stearns Asset Management. So I was around the Wall Street game for probably 37 years in one form or another, and since 2007 have been running other types of companies, a real estate company, a big project, the New York Wheel, and now a company that's in the industrial chemical or scientific research arena.
Wow. Geez, you are amazing.
Well, I don't know about amazing, but I am somewhat driven to I like doing things that lead to some degree of achievement. So I've sort of done the Wall Street thing for a long time, and now I'm doing the industrial company thing, and it's a lot of fun.
Wow. So how would you say opportunities for advancement have come to you over the course of your life? Would you say it's hard work, knowing the right people, a little bit of both?
I'm one of those people that doesn't like to focus on who you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much more about what you know and hard work. And that's not to say that who you know can't help you. It can, but I believe I got started by working harder than others did. I don't think I was necessarily any more exceptionally brilliant than my peers. I think I just worked harder and maybe tried a little harder. And I wake up every morning thinking that what I'm doing is fantastic and fun, and that enthusiasm and motivation tends to work well for me, and it tends to work well for the people around me. I often tell people who are starting off in their career that they've got to find something they're enthusiastic about, because enthusiasm is infectious, and people want to be around enthusiastic people. They don't want to be around downers. And so better find something that you can be enthusiastic about.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's like, having that passion for whatever it is that you're doing. So what did you enjoy the most about your career on Wall Street?
Well, it's funny because I do so much writing that I have time to reflect on that kind of issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the process of writing something right now, actually, that has caused me to reflect on that issue. And I think what I would say is this: a lot of people go into finance because they love finance, they love money, they love accumulating wealth, they love all of those things. That really wasn't my driving force. I like many people, wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do after I kicked around through college, and I decided to go to business school because it was, in some ways, less of a commitment than going to law school or something like graduate school. Mm-hmm. And when I say commitment, what I mean is it was less deterministic of where I was headed, because I wasn't sure. I think we ask a lot of 22-year-olds and expecting them to know what they want to do for the rest of their life. I'm 64 and I barely know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I don't know how you do that at 22. Oh. But I ended up deciding that I would go into finance because it struck me as a broad general arena, banking did, and that I could then make a decision about what I wanted to really do after I learned more about different industries. But what ends up happening is that I happened to get into finance and Wall Street at a time when the amount of change and creativity was at an all-time record high. And I believe that over the 37 years I was on Wall Street, the amount of creativity made it a fabulous place for people who valued creative content to their work, which I did. So I stayed with Wall Street for all those years because I was able to do a lot of different things. I was less a specialist than a generalist, but I was able to do so many different things that it stayed fresh and new and creative for me all the while, and that's what really turned me on.
Nice. And I love what you said about not knowing what you want to do at 20 and that you didn't even really know, because that's the reason why I started this podcast, because I've always had that issue, figuring out what my purpose is supposed to be, here and what I'm supposed to be doing. So I figure, bringing people on who can share their experiences can help others who are in that struggle and let them know that, you're not alone. Not everyone has it figured out,
Well, in fact, Nicole, I think a very, very small percentage of people have it figured out. I go back and reflect upon a fellow that I knew. It was a very good friend of mine, and he came into college as a freshman with a subscription to Business Week, almost unheard of in 1971, I might add. And he knew he wanted to be the CEO of a company. Mm. And what's interesting is that he ended up not really doing anything at all like that, even though he was 100% sure that's what he wanted when he walked in. The rest of us just sort of walked into school with a big shrug saying, I don't know what I want to do, and that's why I'm here, to figure it out. And, a number of us ended up going on to become CEOs of big companies, but he didn't. Wow. And so I'm not altogether sure that knowing so certainly what you want to do at that young age is a good thing. I think it's better to stay open-minded, mm-hmm. get some basic skills. And what I tell people is their first job or their first few jobs are generally vertical learning curves anyway. And so long as they're learning and doing different things and with good people around them as good role models. The rest of it is somewhat irrelevant because nowadays with the amount people move around, you can do something for a few years and change it up and do something else, and you can build upon your skills. And I think that's the smart way to approach a career, and that is to stay very flexible, stay very open-minded, and determine as you go what you like best and what really gets your motor running every morning.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome advice. So what was the most stressful part of working on Wall Street?
Well, I would argue that the old expression that it's lonely at the top is spoken from great experience. It does get lonely at the top because you have to make tough decisions.
Yeah.
And when I was the toughest moment I ever had was when I was running Bear Stearns Asset Mgmt. And what was tough was that something very unexpected in the sense that if you'd asked me what were the big risks, where were the big points that you could come under attack in this business, this issue that came and sort of bit us in the backside was not on that list. This was something that surprised us, came up out of the blue, and it was a market-driven event, which was because of the whole real estate and subprime and structured product problems came up in 2007 and 2008. They basically reared their ugly head and took something that we were doing that was very, very successful and just absolutely sort of threw us against the wall. And the hard part about that, for me, was that we fought the valiant fight for 6 months. It became obvious probably 3 months into it that it was a fight we couldn't win, and now it was just about damage control. We went through that painful process. There's nothing like fighting a battle you're not going to win. And at the end of it, I spent probably 6 months worrying about whether or not the forces of nature, and in this case the U.S. attorneys, were going to indict me or any of my people around me for wrongdoing, because there was a lot of pain in the market and a lot of people wanted to find people around whose neck they could hang this pain.
Right.
So that was the most difficult time. Knowing that you've done the right thing by your customers as best you could, and then having somebody accuse you of not doing the right thing for your customers is a very painful process. I did learn after 2 years under what I call the hot lights of the U.S. Attorney's investigation, I did learn that, when they've poured over 4 years of emails that I wrote, that I can write emails without being ashamed of it, in the sense that nothing came out that was of concern. I was never a target or a subject of the investigation, but I was a witness, and it finally passed. But it was a long, difficult period to get through, and there's nothing like the risk of somebody saying you've done something wrong and you need to go to jail. Right. To get your attention. So that was the hard part, and I do believe that many senior people on Wall Street in almost every era go through something very similar, and it's part of the price you have to pay. You risk being in the spotlight when something goes wrong. It's the buck stops here problem, and that when something goes wrong, they come to the top, as they should, and they figure out whether or not you're culpable. And even if you're not culpable, which I was not, you're the captain of the ship, and the ship is at the bottom of the ocean, so chances are you're not going to be keeping your position, which is in fact what happened with me. I ended up sort of moving on, and that's a hard thing to go through, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I feel like those experiences are all growth experiences if you look at them in the right perspective.
Absolutely. So now looking back at, you leaving, do you feel like things ended the way that they should have? And that chapter came to a close because it needed to for you to move to the next part of your life?
Well, I take great pride in sort of. There's one way I have of putting it. I was the CEO of a business that got caught in the middle of a serious financial hurricane, and the ship ended up at the bottom of the North Atlantic. The Titanic analogy. But what's interesting is that when there were 300 lawsuits, 300 legal actions taken against Bear Stearns Asset Management. They were criminal, they were civil, they were arbitration cases, and there were regulatory actions totaling 300. And as the CEO, when I asked people, how many do you think I was named in? Most people say, 300? Wow. And the answer was I was named in 0. And what I like to say is that even though I spent a lot of time with the U.S. attorneys and they knew everything about everything that I did for 4 years when I ran that business, they came up and gave me a clean bill of health, as did everybody else. And I say to myself and to anybody who cares to listen that it speaks loudly to somebody when they can go through that kind of intense review and inspection, and you come up with 0 times being named in any lawsuits. It must mean you did something right.
Absolutely.
So it was necessary to go through that to move on.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny, Nicole, because at the 5-year point, somebody called me up and said, how does it feel? And I said, what do you mean, how does it feel? And they said, well, you've passed the statute of limitations. Now whatever you did in 2007 is behind you, truly. And I hadn't thought of it that way, but other people had thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I guess I am really glad it's behind me. It's now hard to believe, but it was 11 years ago. But I don't know that I'd recommend it to anybody to go through just as an experience, but it does indeed make you stronger when you do go through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can hold your head up high because, you were clean. So, I mean, that says something. You are a professor at Cornell.
I was one for 10 years. I actually just recently retired from that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I started teaching and what they call the practicum, which is that, if you're going to teach theory, you're sort of a research professor. And if you're going to teach the practicum, which business schools obviously want more and more of these days, I taught the practicum. My courses were extremely popular because they were very real world oriented, and I like to consider myself a good storyteller. So I take pride in the fact that the nickname among the students for my courses were the Story Time with Rich, which to me is a wonderful way to teach, because teaching with stories is now, in the days of the internet, believe me, you can't teach facts to people anymore because they're ahead of you on the facts, even in class. So you have to teach something more, and teaching with stories and giving lessons on how to look at things in the business setting, I think is very much more valuable. And so I enjoyed it for 10 years and then decided that they needed to get people who were closer to the business world than 10 years, and they needed new stories. So I could have stayed on, and they wanted me to stay on. I said, I think 10 years is the right time.
Wow, that's good. So when you were teaching, what was the most important thing that you wanted your students to, take from your class?
Well, each course has a couple of key lessons, and I always tried to make sure that they would understand those key lessons. Probably my favorite course that I taught, and that I've actually spent a lot of time lecturing about around the world, and indeed I was asked to go back and give a guest lecture in this regard at the university this past year or this spring, and I've written a couple of books about, is the whole pension crisis. And what I generally wanted them all to take away as a fundamental message was that the pension crisis is maybe the biggest issue that most young people will face in their in the next 40 years because it's so pervasive, it's global, and it's going to dictate so much about what direction the world goes because it affects the pace of growth for the younger generation, which is pretty darn important. It affects the lifestyle of the aging population, which is pretty darn important to them. And the two, unfortunately, have been in conflict with each other in terms of where the resources are going to go. And I say to everybody that I don't care how wealthy you become, this is a crisis that you can't build your walls high enough. This is a crisis that you have to help solve no matter who you are, because it goes to the issue of the sort of the stability of the worldwide economy. The pension crisis, I think you will see and everybody will see in the next 30 years is critically important to us all because it's a huge amount of money and a lot of it's unfunded, and how countries and municipalities and states handle that is going to be important. I joke about the fact that the most heavily fortified border in the world is likely to become the border between Illinois and Wisconsin, because Wisconsin is number one in the country in the amount of money they've set aside for retirement and post-retiree medical, and Illinois is number 50. So imagine being a half mile on the wrong side of that border.
Wow.
So it's a big issue. It's going to affect almost everybody on the globe, and I want to see everybody's awareness of the issue rise to the point where they understand what's coming at us.
That's a great segue into my next question, because I wanted you to tell us about your obsession with retirement and what made you this way.
Well, I think what made me this way was being given a challenge in the early 90s where I was asked to run the retirement services business at Bankers Trust. And that, as a business, we were one of the largest in the world. We were the largest processor of 401k plans, but also, defined benefit pension plans. And I learned so much about it, and it's kind of like, becoming, the beast master. You get in there and you get a peek at the beast, and you'll never forget it, and I kind of got to look at the retirement beast. And as a financial issue, it's always stayed with me that it was an important issue to spend time thinking about and focusing on. Then on the personal side, I think the older you get, the more you think about retirement. And I don't mean necessarily just, hey, I want to go and spend my life on a golf cart in Florida. Retirement in a broader sense. I mean, look, some of us define ourselves by what we do every day in our work, and retiring is an identity crisis issue. I mean, there's all sorts of personal issues as well as financial issues as well as global issues. That's why I like retirement. It's a all-encompassing array of issues that you can spend, your lifetime pondering.
Okay. So I'm going to play a little game with you. It's called the Oh Hell No game. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about, 401ks and investments and stuff. And you tell me if it's an oh hell no or if it's an oh hell yes. It's okay, Oh. All right. So I'm pretending I'm someone saying these things. So I always invest in my company 401k. Is that an oh hell no or an oh hell yes?
Oh hell yes.
Okay. So always max on your 401k contribution. Oh hell no, oh hell yes.
Oh hell yes.
I have never had a 401k. It's too late for me to save. Oh hell no or oh hell yes?
Oh hell no, it's never too late.
Okay. Is there a formula to figure out what I should be saving for retirement? Oh hell no or oh hell yes?
Oh hell yes. There are a number of formulas. It is very possible. There are so many calculators out there. All you have to do is go online to one of the big retirement houses like Fidelity and say retirement calculator, and it'll walk you through step by step, asking you what age do you want to retire, how old are you now, how much do you have in your 401k already, et cetera, and it will advise you on, how big of a problem you have or what you need to do.
And the last one is, I have so many bills and my job doesn't offer a 401k. I just can't save. Oh, hell no, or oh, hell yes.
Oh, hell no. You need to save. I hate to put it this way, but for anyone to rely entirely on Social Security and the social safety net is a mistake, I believe. And you can see all the tension in the United States, and we're better off than most countries, but you can see all the tension about people not wanting to pay extra taxes to help fund other people's retirement. So you better figure out how to sort of prepare yourself to take care of yourself. So you need to focus on it, bills or no bills.
So your last book is called Tales of a Modern Prisoner, Gulag 401k, right? That's your
Correct.
last book, okay?
Yeah, I would reverse that. Gulag 401k is the title.
Okay.
The subtitle is Tales of a Modern Prisoner.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about what inspired this book. I know your obsession with, retirement and giving people information, but tell us a little bit about that. And also, tell us about this title.
Well, Gulag 401k is a title that came to me because, a gulag is a Siberian prison, okay? And people get sent off to the gulag and, some can get away from it and some can't. It's almost like the inescapable prison at the end of your life. And a Gulag 401k is my way of saying the prison of retirement. 401k is just a modern version that people know means retirement. And I use the 401k because most gulags are numbered, like Gulag 17, Gulag, 21, etc. And so Gulag 401k was just a cute way of saying, look, the prison of retirement awaits everybody in different forms, and the stories that are in Gulag 17, the tales of a modern prisoner, are mostly stories from my career, and they are stories of different people or different situations that relate to retirement, looking at them in the early part of a career, the middle part of a career, and in the later part of a career. And so they are all looped into the retirement theme, but they are really stories from my business career that I thought were always very poignant and interesting and fun. And look, I can't write anything without a fun angle to it, to be honest with you. It's just who I am. So I think they're very entertaining stories that happen to have a retirement theme to them. And I think anybody who reads it would get a kick out of the stories. I've had very good reviews from a lot of different sources. People have given it 5 stars pretty much across the board. I don't know that anybody's given it less than 5 stars. So I'm pretty proud of it. I think it's a good read and encourage everybody to pick it up and take a look at it. You might learn something.
Yes, absolutely. You will learn something. I have my favorite quote is something that you wrote in the book, and it was, never assume you are the smartest or the best in the room. I love that. Love.
That's an important life lesson.
Yeah, it sure is.
Not to be too political, but I sure wish more people in Washington had learned that lesson in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm. So what do you struggle with at this stage in your life?
Well, at this moment, and I make no joke about it, my biggest struggle is how to reconcile what's going on in this country and what's going on in Washington. It troubles me a great deal. I don't like seeing families separated at the border. I don't like seeing sort of what I would call harsh-minded, bad-intentioned policies towards human beings. So that's what bothers me the most. I mean, I have a lovely family who are all healthy, and I've got grandkids who are all healthy and on their way to getting educated. So I enjoy my work. I'm in a wonderful, wonderful marriage. I have great family and kids. I've got no complaints on that side. So my focus of attention is how to make this country a little bit saner than it's been in the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's really hard to watch. So I want to ask you now, do you feel like you have been living a purpose-driven life?
Interesting question. I think I always have lived a purpose-driven life, but I think the purpose has changed regularly over my 64 years. And I always have goals, and I'm always very achievement-oriented and driven. So the answer is yes, but it's always changing. So I think that's part of what keeps it fresh and interesting, and staying flexible is an important part of the equation to doing that. So yes, it always has a purpose, and I think that's what gives you a reason to get up every morning.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the biggest lesson that you have learned over the course of your career that stays with you every day and helps you to make decisions, going forward?
Well, sounds corny, but I believe that both treating people that you work with and that are your counterparties or your customers or whoever with the highest dignity possible as human beings, and always follow the very simplest of golden rules that you always treat other people the way you wish to be treated. And whether you're in a negotiation or a business deal or just walking along on the street or sitting in a cab, try and keep that objective in mind and treat people fairly and well and with dignity. And to me, that's the most important thing you can do. And by the way, it comes through and people see it, people react to it, and they want to work with you if you're that kind of person and a person of integrity. So to me, that's what makes the difference.
I agree. I think it's essential. So that's not corny. I love it. So what will you do with all the money you have saved for retirement? Come on, Richard. What are you going to do? Tell us. We want to know. Because I know you saved a lot of money because you aren't playing around with your retirement.
Well, obviously, I like to think that, my wife and I are going to live a decent and pleasant life, till, our time is up.
Right.
But I don't believe that either of us believe in the kinds of what I would call excessive extravagances that you see a lot of people that would have a similar amount of money have. Mm-hmm. I donate a great deal of it, and I give a great deal of it away to the charities that I care about and to the people that I care most about. I'm not a big believer in, huge inheritance issues. I think my kids are all doing well enough, and I make sure they'll get something when I leave this earth. But I like to make sure that the causes and the things that I care about in the world get the kind of attention and money they deserve. So that's more where we spend our time and money. A little bit on family, making sure that the rest of the family who maybe doesn't have as much money can enjoy life as much as we like to enjoy life, but also making sure that the rest of the world is left in a better place when we leave, if at all possible.
That's great. So this is the Oh Hell No podcast. So I always ask my guests to share an Oh Hell No moment with us. And I know that people have oh hell no moments all the time. I
have an oh hell moment every day when I come home from work. And my oh hell no moment comes when I turn on MSNBC and see what in the heck is going on this day. And that's been my oh hell moment for the last 2 years. And I look forward to not having that be the case in the near future. I'd like to think I can come home from work and not be shocked and appalled by what I see on TV for the day. So my oh hell moment is very much focused on what's going on every day down in Washington.
Right, I agree. That is definitely an oh hell no moment. So it was so great having you on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. Tell us where we can purchase your book and where we can keep up with, whatever else you're doing in terms of writing new books and things like that.
Sure. Well, I self-published through Lulu Press, at least my most recent books. And that means that you can buy them most economically on Lulu Press, but you can also buy them easily on Amazon. And the one advantage to buying them on Amazon is that I have also, for several of my books, done my own audiobooks. So you can buy the audiobooks on Amazon. You can't do that on Lulu.
Nice.
But if you want hard copy or paperback or ebook, it's much cheaper to buy it on Lulu. If you want the ease of purchase and or an audiobook, go to Amazon.
That is amazing. What do you think about Amazon?
Well, a funny little story that is in my most recent book is that if only I had known back in the early 80s, there was a young man who worked for us in my department who was somebody I didn't even know really, and he had a minor job, and his name was Jeff Bezos. And he went on from that job to travel across country and write a business plan for this thing called Amazon. So what do I think of Amazon? I got to tell you, I'm impressed by what they've done over the last 25 years in building up this amazing network. And I love the way they've stayed one step ahead of everybody, whether it's in developing the cloud or, all the other things that they're working on now with the new drone deliveries and whatnot, and buying, the Whole Foods chain. And I mean, I have a lot of respect for Jeff Bezos and what he does and buying the Washington Post and everything. But I also think they've done an amazingly good job at building a strong business backbone.
Yeah, I'm amazed by it, but sometimes I get a little nervous, like, are they doing too much? When is too much too much?
Well, that's a fair question to ask these days, especially with all the data gathering that goes on. You don't know who to trust. Do you trust Facebook? Do you trust Google? Do you trust Amazon? Fundamentally, I do trust them, and fundamentally, I believe that they're doing a lot, but they're really capable, so I'm sticking with them.
Nice. All righty. Well, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and you sharing your story with us.
Okay, good luck to you, Nicole. Thank you very much.
Thank you.